right, welcome to the Krueger Show, everybody. Larry Krueger joined by the coach. Saturday morning. Big football Saturday, but of course, we're coming to you the day before the Niners take on the Philadelphia Eagles at the Link in Philly. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. I'm also brought to you by New York-style Italian sausage. The only kind of Italian sausage I will eat is New York-style Italian sausage. MarinAutoglass.com, 415-883-3030. Underdog Fantasy and Mojo Fantasy. Check the link in the description for both, and they will match you up to your first $100. If you do sign up on the Mojo side, everybody who does automatically is in the running for the Bosa or the Purdy jersey. We were going to give it away on Thanksgiving. We've now pushed it back, but we're definitely giving away a Purdy and a Bosa jersey to everybody who signs up at mojofantasy.com. Coach, how are you this morning?
I'm ready to go, Larry. I'm feeling good, man. It's raining over here. We're getting ready for a wet and wild one. Pause. Coming up against the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm pumped, man. We're about to get a lot of questions answered. We're about to really find out what our team is made of. And let's face it, the elephant in the room is, depending on how we perform in this game, win, lose, or draw, really going to let us know if we're Super Bowl contenders or not. Let's go.
This is it. This is it. You know, a lot of talk. The Niners lost the NFC Championship game last year, and they lost it in Philly, and they lost Purdy that day. And the Eagles, said the Niners have been whining about it ever since. And the Eagles, of course, went on and lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. And the Niners, they can say it's just another game, but the reality is they've been waiting for this one since seriously last year. And it's on. And it's on as of Sunday. All right, let's get right into the matchup. First of all, what do you think, Coach? If I say just forget the football X's and O's, because we're going to get into that, but what is the biggest subplot to this game, in your opinion? What's the biggest storyline of Niners-Eagles? Because with this, the reality is, even though it's a big game, if the Eagles win, it doesn't, guarantee that they're going to the Super Bowl. And if the Niners win, it doesn't even guarantee that they've taken home field away from the Eagles. So really, there's not tons on the line. There's a very good chance these teams meet up again, most likely in Philadelphia, especially if Philly wins on Sunday. But, it's not like this game's deciding anything, really. What's the biggest storyline or subplot to Niners-Eagles?
Well, really, what's at stake is home field advantage for the playoffs. If we really want to look at the perfect scenario of what we do for the season, right? We started out fast. We had a little bit of different production for 3 weeks, averaging 17 points a game on offense, struggling on mightily on defense, particularly getting to the quarterback.
Your mic is blowing in and out a little bit. I'm not sure why, but we're getting every fifth word. No, now we're not getting anything.
Is it much better?
Now let's see. That might be better.
Are we good? Can you hear me talking?
I can hear you talking, but it's kind of I don't know how to, maybe the chat could describe it. It's kind of a we get 3 or 4 words and then we don't get all the words.
Are you hearing what I'm saying right now?
Maybe it's just me. Does everybody hear that? Everybody hear the coach loud and clear?
Yeah, does everybody hear what I'm having to say right now as I'm talking to you right now? Can you hear me talking to you right now, Larry?
I can hear you, but when you said now, it kind of went. Is it a wireless?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll just go with it.
Give me 2 minutes. Go ahead. Go.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to me, this matchup is interesting on a lot of fronts, and we'll get into all of it. I think one of the things I think is really interesting is if it gets down to the fourth quarter. The Niners have, the fourth oldest team in the league, but the youngest quarterback kicker tandem in the league. And if you're asking, Jake or Brock to kind of deliver late in the game with the game on the line and maybe rain coming down, it's probably advantage Ertz and Elliott over the Niners quarterback and kicker. That's one angle where I think, if it gets to be a fourth quarter game, it very well could swing to Philadelphia. I think it's interesting looking at the two quarterbacks from the standpoint, Purdy and Hertz are, if you look at their splits in the last 2 minutes of halves, that Purdy's completion percentage drops at the last 2 minutes of the half from 70% to 55%. His quarterback rating falls from 111 to 71. So it's a small sample size. But then you look at Jalen Hurts in the last 2 minutes of a half, he's completing 70% of his passes, and he's got a passer rating of 84.4.
Right.
That's another area where I kind of see it as an advantage to the Eagles, is just the way Hurts plays in the 2-minute drill. Take Purdy aside because it is a small sample size, but for Hurts in the last 2 minutes of a half, 70%, 84.4 quarterback rating, he plays at a really high level under pressure and with the money on the table. And that's something it's not a one game thing. He's been doing that really for the last couple of years. So how good is, can the Niners, to me, it's a lot about, can the Niners do what they like to do? Can they jump out early on their opening drive? They lead the NFL. The Niners lead the National Football League. They got 9 scores on their first drive. 8 have been touchdowns. Philly's only scored 2 first half touchdowns in their last 2 games. So, and I'm eager to see what Philly's offensive game plan is. I mean, their offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson, I don't think as good as Shane Steichen. And do they come out with a run-heavy script to try to get their offense in rhythm? Do they come out throwing it because they do have 2 number 1 receivers and a very good quarterback? Do they try to play in any way to the rain? I know it's supposedly going to be like 65% rain, but what if all of a sudden the day of the game, the forecast is for heavy rain right around the time of the second half? Do they come? Does when the rain comes and how hard is it going to rain at certain points dictate anything at all about how either team attacks? I think is going to be a real interesting wrinkle to watch.
Yeah, I mean, how do I sound now, Larry? Am I coming in better?
Yeah, it sounds better.
Yeah, sorry about that. But really, I think it's the run game. The Eagles, they have 1,463 yards on the season. They're averaging 4.6 yards a carry with 17 TDs. And really, if you look at what the Eagles are doing versus what the Niners are doing, it's relatively the same. 1,497 for the Niners, 4.6 yards a carry with 18 TDs, right? 10 fumbles for us, 11 fumbles for them. But we get there in a much more diverse way, right? We have 122 yards from Brock Purdy. Now, we lead with 940 from Christian McCaffrey right now, but we also have 138 yards and 136 yards from Elijah Mitchell. And right now, I know that Jordan Mason is somebody who we want to see, and possibly I think he may be questionable to even play in this game. But
he's got a hamstring, yeah.
Right. With the Eagles and our defense involved, I just don't see them being able to matriculate a good offensive run game against us. Right now, their main contributors on the ground are Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift, and Kenneth Gainwell. Kenneth Gainwell only has 202 yards on the season with 57 carries. Right now, DeAndre Swift is going to get his because he's the tip of the spear, right? He's their back. But with Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen Hurts on the ground, that 81 attempts for 470 yards is something that goes missed by a lot of teams. Jalen Hurts, if you look at him through the air, right, really not that impressive, okay, and mediocre in some stances, but really what people are missing is the 11 touchdowns he has on. That's where Jalen Hurts really gets you, and that's where I feel as though that I'm gonna be looking for our defense to stop his production on the ground. I feel offensively, if Jalen Hurts is really made into a pocket passer where you have to make him throw the ball and then you have to make him respond to pressure, their offense becomes very stagnant. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of defenses, that is their game plan against the Eagles, hence them having to come back in most of their games, especially the last 4 games that they've played. I think that this is a game that's tailor-made for us to get up quick on them because Jalen Hurts, they go as Jalen Hurts goes, right? Jalen Hurts isn't feeling too good in games when he starts out slow. They start slow. When Jalen Hurts gets a little bit more comfortable in games, they start coming back. And really, this kind of goes into the Jimmy Garoppolo crowd, right? When we used to give Jimmy so much credit for coming back in games, finishing games. But those of us who are around long enough to watch Jimmy play realize that this is basically the arsonist putting out his own fire. We're giving him credit for putting us in the hole to begin with, right? And he gets all of these comeback considerations for being this clutch starter and making wins a quarterback stat. And then you could really cloak him in those scenarios and make him seem better than what he really is. In certain aspects, I feel that way about Jalen Hurts. Yes, he does get the credit for bringing his team back, but people need to also realize that in those comebacks, he's starting slow.
He at halftime of this last game, he had thrown for 33 yards. They had not converted a third down, and he had 2 turnovers.
Right. Yeah.
Then in the second half, he was spectacular.
Yeah, and really, if we're gonna just say he's average, then I mean, if he's an average starter, then great, he's good for them. But that's not what people are saying about him. It's the same thing works for Jalen Hurts. The same thing that people were saying about Brock when people started uttering that Brock was an MVP candidate. All right, well, the level of scrutiny is a little bit sharper, right? The eye is a little bit harder. Like, we're going to be looking at how you lead this team, right? And to be honest, I feel as though that the Niners, we talk about the Eagles being a perfect litmus test for the Niners. I feel as though that in certain ways, we're a perfect litmus test for the Eagles as well, especially against that offense. Because Kenneth Gainwell, even though he's got 202 yards on the ground, I'm really not impressed with his production. I feel as though that DeAndre Swift, he can move around the field and they could use him a little bit in the same ilk as Christian McCaffrey. But this is a situation where I feel as though that Jalen Hurts gets a lot of yards running the ball based off of the offensive line that he plays behind, and he's in the open field a lot. Conversely, we start looking at yards per contact, right? Yards of contact after you run the ball, right? The Eagles, they average 50%, 58% of their full rushing yards, 1463 for the year, right? 858 of those yards are yards after contact, right? That tells me that half of their runs, a little over half of their runs, are actually hard runs, right? Well, you come over to the Niners and you see that we've got 1497 on the ground, but 1,000 yards of our 1492 are yards after contact. We are a physical team. We push the ball. That's something that I want to see against Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they run the ball and they have a lot. They don't have a lot of yards after contact. For us, I feel as though that we run the ball traditionally. We're going to slow this game down. This game is in the rain. This game is 100% going to be in the rain. It's raining here right now in DC as we speak. This game's going to be in the rain. How much rain, we don't know. But this is a game where if you go into it, it's kind of falling into our lap for the stakes on how we want it to look.
Well, there's so many different things that you hit on there that I want to get to. All right, first, let's talk a little bit about the Niners on the defensive side, because last year in that game, the Niners D-line, I thought one of the themes was that the Niner D-line got pushed around a little bit by the Philly O-line. Now, it was a little unfair because what happened in that game was the Niners lost their quarterback, and the Eagles just said, we're not going to take any chances. We're just going to run the ball strictly. And they ran it 44 times in the game against the Niners, and they ran for 148. It looks really bad, and some of those highlights of Kinlaw getting moved in the run game looked even worse. But then when you look at the yards per carry, the Niners only gave up 3.4 a carry. But what really makes their run game so difficult is that I kind of like Gainwell. I know his stats don't look good, but it seems like against the Niners, he always plays really well. He can catch the ball. But the guy that they just brought in from Detroit is a hell of a running back. And then you got Ertz. And then you got Ertz on the designed runs, and then you got Ertz on the scrambles. So, I mean, the one thing with the Eagles is, To me, I think the number one thing for the Niners is this Eagle team can run it at you. Then Hertz can beat you with designed runs. Then he has got two number one receivers and a great tight end when Goddard's healthy. They have a terrific offensive line. And then Hertz can scramble. When you cover everybody and you shut everything down, he can scramble. He's got 11 rushing touchdowns, as you mentioned. 8 of them are on this brotherly shove play, these 1-yard quarterback sneaks.
Right.
And Wilkes talked about it this week, and he's like, we just got to stay out of, that quarterback shove territory. So unlike most teams that are trying to get 10 yards and 4 downs, they're just trying to get like 7 yards and 3 downs. They want to get to like 7 yards and in 2 downs. They want to get to like 3rd and 3. They get to 3rd and 3, they can just go push, tush push or brotherly shove. It's interesting. I asked Bosa this week, what's the key to going at a guy like Hertz? And he's like, it's key that we rush as one, because we got to squeeze the pocket down on this guy. We can't give him any obvious run lanes. He goes, because when he scrambles and he gets out, he's like, those plays are super deflating for the defense. So the Niners took Javon Hargrave away from the Eagles. He's not known as a run defender, but man, the Niners D-line's got 15 sacks in the last 3 games since they added Chase Young. Since last year, of course, they've added Hargrave, Farrell, Chase Young, and Randy Gregory. Big question on Armstead is the foot injury. And then the depth at safety is a little bit of a question in the run D as well, with Gibson and Jair Brown, because I don't know who's behind those 2 guys, to be completely honest. Is it Taylor Hawkins? Is it Eric Harris? I'm not really sure. But to me, Coach, I think the number one thing on defense, I feel pretty good about the Niners secondary standing up to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Ambry told me that he played Devontae Smith in the bowl game when Michigan played Alabama, and that he had Devontae and he did really well against him. Mooney's coming off of a terrific performance. I think he can at least be decent against A.J. Brown, and I don't think they're going to have Dallas Goedert, so that takes Goddard away. But the big concern I have is, do they have to play games up front to get pass rush on Hertz, and do they give him run lanes, and can they stop him from converting on 3rd down with his legs? If the Niners do a good job at limiting his scrambles and he does not convert a bunch of key 3rd downs with his legs, I feel pretty good about the 49ers' chances on defense. I don't think their D-line is going to get pushed around as much in this game as it did last year.
Well, it's really going to come down to the trenches. This is a game about the trenches. I started with the run game because that's what football is all about. But really, it's going to be our D-line versus their offense, right? And vice versa. The rush lanes notwithstanding for Jalen Hurts to get out, that's going to be contingent upon how this defensive line is performing against the O-line. That's just how it looks. They're going to choose whether or not and use discretion on getting Jalen Hurts developed on the run game as a ball carrier, depending on how our defensive line responds to them. Now, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Kelsey, Cam Jurgens, and Lane Johnson, they're class personified. This got to give it up. This is going to be the best offensive line that we see, right? Even if we beat them and move on, we're not going to see a O-line as good as these guys. So really, I'm not worried about what we do in the passing game, because everything is predicated upon how comfortable Jalen Hurts feels, right? And really, there's going to be a lot of answers. There's going to be some questions that are going to be answered straight up. We know what we run. We run palms and cover 3. That's what we run. That's our coverage. So we know that Mooney is going to be locked up with A.J. Brown. Now, is Mooney going to travel with A.J. Brown the way Kyle made a request that Mooney be on top of DK Metcalf the entire game? I would hope so, right? Because this is a game where you don't want to get schemed out. This is good on good. So you keep your best on your best, right? I don't want to get caught with our pants down getting locked into a defense with having Diamond Lador locked in at the nickel over A.J. Brown, just because we don't want to bend the knee. So I'm looking for our defense to play heady and savvy. I would like to
And by
see.
the way, that is a question mark because the Niners, for the most part, this year have not traveled. When I say traveled, they haven't moved. They haven't played matchup games. They've played left
Mhm,
and right. And other
mhm.
than the Seattle game, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that Mooney Ward has done a lot of traveling with one receiver all year. They've pretty much played sides. So the tendency, I think, is probably to play sides and don't worry who's on who.
Right.
But they loved the matchup last week so much with DK and Mooney, and I think they like the idea of Mooney on the bigger receivers.
He's
So
comfortable with it.
yeah, I mean, but the thing is, he's DK doesn't have the moves or the poise at the catch point that AJ Brown has. So
Mhm.
it's like I think DK is an easier cover for Mooney, but I'm eager to see what they do there because I don't know what they're going to do there. I don't know if they're going to say have Mooney go everywhere AJ Brown goes like they
Mhm.
did last week against DK, or if that was just a 1 week deal.
Well, I mean, I would like to see him do it. You'd understand that it definitely takes an element away from the offense when they know that they don't get the same picture from the defense every snap. I feel as though that he showed that he could do it in the last game, and if DK is good enough to break ranks, I mean, I would guess that I would hope that AJ Brown is good enough to break ranks so he can start traveling with them. Really, the biggest matchup for me is going to be Julio Jones versus Ambry Thomas. That's gonna be something to look at on the outside.
Or
They may
Devontae, you mean Devontae with Devontae too
I
against
think they're
Ambry.
gonna put Devontae in the I think they're gonna put Devontae at the slot against Demo. I think
Okay.
the look is gonna be I think the look is gonna be AJ Brown versus Mooney. It's gonna be Julio on the outside versus Ambry, and it's gonna be Devontae on Diamador in the slot.
I'll take my chances like that. I guess the one guy I'd worry about there would be Brown against. I'd worry about Mooney going against Brown, but I
Mhm.
like the other two matchups for the Niners
Okay.
because
Yeah,
I don't think Julio can get away from Ambry, and
but that's the thing. That's the
Ambry's
thing.
physical.
That's the thing. We gonna have to see Ambry be physical because this is one of those games where Julio to be a factor, he don't have to run away from Ambry. He's gonna have to out physical. He's gonna be a big receiver on him. Gonna look for a lot of now routes, screens, digs, comebacks. They're just gonna really try to beat Ambry up over there. That's what I see what's gonna happen. And with Demo on the inside with Devontae Smith, I feel as though they're gonna try to get Diamond Lenore in space. Honestly speaking, if we're looking at the secondary, this may be one of the games where I would, if they went with Devontae on the inside and Julio on the outside, this is one of those games where I wouldn't mind putting Ambry on the inside. I wouldn't mind putting an Ambry on somebody quick, somebody where Ambry can be confident being a physical defender, knowing that he can tackle this guy and actually have the speed to cover him. I would like to see Diamado Lenore on Julio. I think Diamado Lenore is big enough, stout enough, strong enough, faster than Julio Jones, and actually could get a pick, right? I just think that even with Julio Jones not being fast and as quick as he used to when he was in his prime, he's big enough and he's girthy enough to wall off Ambry Thomas, right? He's big enough and girthy enough to play to big boy him, right? Make himself a big target, get in front of him, get those nitpicky yards, those 6-yard digs, those 5-yard comebacks. That's what I see where if Diamador was on Julio on the outside, he'd be way too dynamic to get away with that stuff. He'd be able to get a pick. So for me, and this is just us spitballing, but
Yeah.
that's how I see it. You know,
Who are you picking to win this game? By the way,
I have us winning. I have the Niners winning this game.
what score?
Right now, I got us going 20. I think I had it at 20, 28, 28, 24.
Okay, so we see it kind of the same. I'm thinking 24-21 49ers. I think
Mhm.
it's two games. I think the Niners get out to a 24-7 lead and hold on, or 21-7 lead and hold on 24-21, win by
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
The reason I like the 49ers to win this game is I think the 49ers are going to get turnovers. When I'm looking at the way these teams are playing, and I went back and looked at Philly's last 4 or 5 games, Jalen Hurts has fumbled now in 5 consecutive games. And he's lost 3 of those fumbles. And some of them were bad luck. He had the fumbled snap last week. It was just a miscommunication. But the 49ers on the defensive side have recovered opponents' fumbles in 4 straight games themselves. They've also totaled 4 interceptions and 9 total takeaways in the last 4 games. And the Niners lead the NFL with 15 interceptions. They're at plus 11 turnover differential, which is tied with the Steelers for best in the league. And Ertz has already thrown basically his career high. He's got 10 picks for the Eagles. They've got 16 turnovers against 14 takeaways. So I think the Niners get turnovers in this game. And I think that's going to be the difference. Is I think those turnovers are going to help the 49ers. I think Philly's going to do a lot of good things in this game, but I think the 49ers takeaways and turnovers are going to favor them. And that to me is why I'm giving them the edge. I think these teams are really, if they played 10 times, I think Niners would win 5. I think the Eagles would win 5. I think they're really, really even. I know the stats say that the Eagles pass D has flaws.
Yeah, I don't see that, Larry. I think
I think Niners are better.
Yeah, and just in certain areas, I feel like it comes out as a wash as us being an even team, but we are definitely not made the same way, right? I feel like the same way that an Eagles fan or anybody who's a conscientious observer of football will be able to say, man, the Phillies offensive line is comparing them to our offensive line is almost embarrassing. It's not even close, right? Completely 2 different units on how they get things done. But I feel the same way about even mentioning Philly's linebackers compared to our linebackers. Like Philly's linebackers are woefully,
and there's no Cunningham. You saw that, right?
And he's out with what is that, a hamstring?
I didn't see what it was, but he's out, and Fletcher Cox is almost assuredly, even if he plays, he's not going to play well.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're down their 2 top interior run stuffers.
Yeah. So Goddard's doubtful. We don't know if he's going to play. Fletcher Cox
didn't practice on Thursday or anytime this week.
Okay.
So but they did say that Goddard was stretching on Friday and was trying to get it going, but I don't know. I mean, that would be a surprise if Goddard goes.
Yeah. Zach Cunningham is out. Evans knee out. Goddard out. We just talked about that. And Cox is out with the groin. Well, questionable with the groin.
And Milton Williams is coming off concussion protocol, so we don't quite know his status yet either.
Yeah, I just don't see it on their linebacking core, Larry, to be honest with you. I don't as far as passing is concerned, they leave much to be desired. Even in the turnover differential, we're tied with first at plus 11. They're 19th at -2, man. They don't take the ball away. They struggle with it. And that's another thing. That's another element of their team that gets exacerbated when Jalen Hurts is struggling early, right? That defense has problems getting offenses off the field, right? The problem is that they've got such a powerful mechanism in that offensive line that they can control games where they can have long, laborious drives. But I don't think they get away with that with us. I really don't. And as far as Brock is concerned, I think that Brock is going to be able to carve up that secondary, especially that linebacking coach. That's his bread and butter in between the hashes. And for them to be weak right there, and for us to have 3 extra days to prepare, this is also a referendum on Kyle. Like, this really does need to be a good game plan focused on that linebacking core because they're bad. They're not okay. They're not shit. They're bad.
Well, here's the deal. There's no Zach Cunningham, right? And which was a great pickup by Roseman. He was great at Vandy, and I don't know why the hell Tennessee cut him. I mean, he's just a tremendous talent. But he's out now. So Cunningham's got the hamstring. He's out. Fletcher Cox has got the groin. He's questionable. Dallas Goddard's got the forearm break. He's doubtful. The guy who I think is going to be on the spot is Christian Ellis, who has struggled badly in coverage. I think the Niners will be able to exploit him. They got Nakobe Dean on the IR, and now Cunningham hasn't practiced all week and isn't going to go. So Christian Ellis is going to get that start. He's a former undrafted free agent. He played at Idaho. He's only played 115 career defensive snaps. He has a 39.1 coverage grade. So, I mean, I think there's no doubt Shanahan's going to go right at Christian Ellis and try to make plays on Ellis.
Yeah, I believe that as well. I think he's going to struggle mightily. I think that, you know, for what it's worth, our defense, I mean, our offense is predicated on uh, sitting down in zones and exploiting defensive rules. And I feel as though that's what we're going to do on offense. I'm looking for us to slow this game down, run the ball against these boys, get everything involved, get everybody involved as far as Debo and Christian are concerned. We're running the ball. I would like to see a third rushing element. I would like to see a little bit more of Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason. Just got to be somebody else running the ball. And as far as passing the ball is concerned, it's going to be a Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle day. I really believe that. Feel like it's going to be taking candy from a baby, man. Really, they're that bad. Um, um, with their secondary as far as the middle is concerned. And you saw it, man. Josh Allen had a day. They have quarterbacks who have days, and they kill the middle of that deep. It's a real issue.
The other thing in this game, I think, is, let's go back to how the Niners lost the last game. They couldn't block Hassan Reddick. The Eagles did not even respond in any way to any of the play action game fakes.
Right.
And they just kind of played the run on the way to the quarterback, and the Niners came out in the play action. Brock took an extra second trying to look for Ayuk to get open, and Reddick blew past Tyler Kroft and hit Purdy on the elbow 6 snaps into the game, and it was game, set, match. I think we need to see the ball come out quickly. I mean, whether it's to Christian McCaffrey underneath or to the receivers, I would love to see this be a heavy dose of McCaffrey. He's the NFL's leading rusher. He's scored now in 3 straight games. And since the touchdown streak got snapped. But to me, it's like they got to get the ball out quickly. Kittle seems to be the hot guy lately. He's caught the 19 targets in the last 2 games against Philadelphia. He had 15 for 183 in 2020. So, but this is still a big one. Is that, I asked Colton McKivitz, do you prefer the big-bodied ends or the speedsters? And he's like, oh, I'll take the big-bodied guys every time. So I asked him about that going into the Jacksonville game. And at that point, he was blocking Trayvon Walker. Well, now he's going to have to block Hassan Reddick. And I think the Niners are going to have to help McKivitz on Reddick somehow with Charlie Warner or put an extra back over there, try to chip him. They got to give McKivitz some help, because if there's one advantage for the Eagles in this game, Coach, it's the speed advantage that Hassan Reddick has on Colton McKivitz. And I think if the Niners try to just ignore it and just be like, don't worry about it, I think that's not necessarily the best game plan. To me, the Niners offensive line is going to have to somehow deal with the 2 monsters that they have, which is Reddick off the edge against McKivitz, and then Jalen Carter inside. I mean, Jalen Carter has movement ability inside that nobody else really has in this league. I mean, he moves much faster than Jordan Davis, much faster than Fletcher Cox, who may not even go because of the groin. And to me, that's, now you get Feliciano in there. He did face the Eagles 3 times last year with the Giants. But man, I mean, to me, Jalen Carter is a big part of this game, because Jalen Carter, if they can get him blocked and solidify that middle, I think Brock is going to be able to pick apart this safety. But if Jalen Carter, who has this explosive pass rush moves and movement ability, if he just dominates against the Niner interior players and is living in the backfield, that he could blow up the entire game plan all by himself. That's how close he is to the ball, how close he is to Purdy, how worried I am about Brendel and the guards blocking him. To me, the number one concern in this game is, can the Niners block Jalen Carter?
Well, they've done a good job. I watched the last couple of games of what they've been doing on the offensive line. John Feliciano is an upgrade. So we have that going for us. He did show why He's a bit of a journeyman in his last couple of games. He's not perfect. He's an upgrade. There's a difference between the two. Now with the inside, Fletcher Cox, I do believe he's going to try to go. And I feel as though that they kept him out of this game because they wanted him to go on this game. So I get that feeling, but we'll be able to prove that proof of concept tomorrow. Now this kid, man, uh, he's talented. He is. He's going to be a problem. And right now, what I see what our offensive line is doing is that they're cutting down splits. All right, we're mugging up in the pass game, and we're not necessarily giving the defensive line a chance to give us a second move. And how you do that as an offensive line is you start with a harder set, right? So instead of coming out of your set and popping up, showing hands, or probably using independent hands, what they're doing is they're coming out with a hard set. They're popping up, and immediately within the first step of their set, they're striking with their play side hands, and they're getting hands. They're bringing the fight to the defensive line. And even though we necessarily aren't doing the best job at sustaining their first rush, what we are doing is that we're establishing the pocket immediately for Brock to get the ball out. And that's something that kind of doesn't happen when you have soft sets and when you have vertical sets or 45-degree angle sets from offensive linemen, where you're more or less trying to figure out what move you're going to get from your defensive lineman or your rusher coming to you, versus when hard sets, it's a lot more physical, right? And the downside of hard setting is, the upside is that you can put your hands on somebody and bring the fight and get your hands on a much talented and a much stronger guy and get his inertia from him and and bring the fight to him and take away the point of attack as soon as possible. But the downside to that is you can miss. You can get hit with a quick rip. You can get hit with a swipe, or you can get hit with a side scissors, and then it's over. They've won immediately. So, yeah, you can bring the fight prematurely, and that's what we're doing. But the backside of that is you are seeing those moments where defensive linemen are guessing right now, where they're starting to say, all right, well, if you're going to hard set me, I'm coming in with a move off rip, or I'm giving you a long arm. I'm giving you a bull rush. I'm not even trying to give you a move, because that's what happens. You're trying to catch them off guard. So it's working for our offensive line. We do mix it up. We don't go hard set all the time on passing downs, but I will be interested to see how Jalen Carter goes against Aaron Banks on the inside. They've done a good job at protecting Brock for the most part, but we just really there are defensive lines that I think they're a little surprised at how elusive Brock really. He's hard to get down, man. He's got remarkable pocket presence. So with Brock protecting himself on top of our new modus operandi with our offensive line, where we're hard setting a lot more. We understand the caveats of hard setting is that you can miss early, you can lose right out of the gate with a good bull rush, you can lose right out of the gate with a good first move or a second move. But uh the new hard setting on top of Brock being able to have pocket presence and move in the pocket, I'm happy with what we've done thus far, and I think it's going to work against them. They're a physical bunch up front, but they're not necessarily fast. They're the speed of what they do is in Hassan. I don't want to see Brock out in the open, because that's where Hassan Reddick is special. When where you lose depth of pocket, Brock gets to the top of the pocket, or he gets flushed out, and then he's a wounded animal, because that's where Hassan eats, right? That's where he makes his money.
Do you think the Eagles' passing D is as bad as you know, as it looks on paper? I mean, they're 29th in ranking as far as pass D. Do you think their defense is that bad against the pass?
They gamble. And that's what it looks like on paper. So Bradbury is an old salty boot, and he will guess. He will play off and give you different looks and then scoop up under. He'll show man and really be in zone and vice versa. He'll give you a press man bail look. And then come right back up off of it on the backside. So I will say this. Their corners are savvy. I like Bradley Roby. I like Bradbury. I really love Darius Slay. I think he is their one guy that's going to be a good matchup against BA. But These guys got holes. Bradbury's got holes. He does. He's not infallible. I would say if I had to rank him as far as good, bad, average, or indifferent, I'd say he's above average, but he's not good. Uh, Good is like consistently good, and he makes way too many mistakes to be consistent. He's ranked 80th out of 120 cornerbacks on PFF. So for me, and really Darius Slay is ranked 53rd. So he's much better than him, but that's really not that much to write home about. They can be had in the passing game. And really the the talent of what they do is in Blankenship and Byard, their safety play. They've got really good safety play, especially with the addition of Byard. But linebackers got to have pass coverage too, Larry, and that's the weak point. That's their weakest link.
Well, the middle of their defense, they miss badly Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I mean, they don't have. If you look at where they're getting gouged, it's that middle, intermediate middle, and deep middle. That's where you go. And the Niners live there, right? That's where Purdy likes to live. Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey, Jawan. They love those crossing patterns and those middle of the field patterns. I think if you like the Niners to win this game, I think you can easily see them completing a number of balls in that middle of the field area. Where a year ago they had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who was so spectacular there. Now they don't have that player. I also think the Niners can run the ball on Josh Sweat. I mean, he's off that left edge. And, you got Trent Williams paving the way for McCaffrey. I think the game plan is going to be run it at Josh Sweat with McCaffrey and see if you can kick him out and be real physical with him and run behind your best offensive lineman. One of the stories that's not really connected to these teams other than I'm connecting them is Zach Ertz. The veteran tight end officially cleared waivers yesterday. He was released by the Arizona Cardinals upon his own request. He wants to play for a contender. Had a quad injury earlier this year, had an ACL, I believe, in November of 2022. And he wants to play for a contender, according to JJ Watt. Now, Adam Schefter is reporting that candidates for Ertz could include Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo. I don't know why he would sign with Buffalo at this point. They have Dalton Kincaid, and they probably don't even make the playoffs. Baltimore and Kansas City, on the other hand, are true Super Bowl contenders. I had the Niners and the Eagles down as viable contenders as well. The Niners didn't, Shanahan admitted yesterday that the Niners didn't put in a waiver claim on Ertz. That's not all that surprising. He had an $11.6 million cap number. So if you're going to pay the prorated portion for the rest of the year, it was $2.6 million this year, but there's also like 2 or 3 more years on that deal, and you'd have to take on some responsibility for some of that money. And so it was unlikely that anybody was going to claim him in waivers, and nobody did. So he's now a free agent. He can decide where he wants to go. He came up with the Eagles. Supposedly there was some bad blood between his agent and Howie Roseman at the end there. So does he go back to Philly? I think the foregone conclusion was that he was going to go back to Philly. Philly could use him. Baltimore's lost Mark Andrews for the year. There's no doubt they could use him. Kansas City just has terrible wide receivers. So if they had him, they could go to a 2 tight end set. Ertz is not much of a blocker, but he's a very good receiver. And then there's the Niners. The Niners have Charlie Warner, who I think is doing a very good job as a blocker, but I'd rather have Ertz than Ross Dwelly if it came right down to it. And Ertz did go to Monte Vista, which is in Danville, which is right here in the Bay Area. He played his college ball at Stanford. He's 33. He's only got 27 catches this year for 187, but he's a major red zone threat. At least he was for the Eagles during the prime of his career, and he definitely could offer, something to contenders looking for, to bolster their 2 tight end set. If you're the 49ers, do you go after Ertz? And where's your best guess of where he winds up?
Well, I would say that he looked good in Buffalo, in my opinion. I would say that would be a good look for him. Honestly, I wouldn't
But
mind
what
if
if
we
they one loss away from not making the playoffs?
say that again.
I think from what I'm reading, according to JJ Watt, he wants to win a ring. Is he going to win a ring in Buffalo this year? I mean, there's a very good chance they don't make the postseason.
Well, honestly, I think we could use him really. I feel as though that our offense is missing one more wrinkle. We're missing one more element, and is that element on the field? I mean, is that element in our locker room? Yeah, we have guys right now. We could all of a sudden make use of Danny Gray. There could be a huge emergence of how we use Ray McLeod. All of a sudden, Jordan Mason could be inserted into the lineup. Right? There's guys that could be used, but as far as how this team is made, I think we need to start looking at just the past. These guys, when they get caught up in their Super Bowl window and trying to matriculate through the season, the only time that they're really going to emerge somebody from their depth chart is either if somebody gets hurt, they're desperate. For the most part, they're going to have to bring in somebody who's a veteran who's going to be an immediate contributor. I feel like Zach Ertz falls under that criteria. He could come in and actually give us a little bit more in the pass catching from the tight end perspective than what we've been getting out of Ross Dwelly and Charlie Warner, which is pretty much nothing. We haven't been getting anything from the two of them. I feel as though that he could be another willing pass catcher for Brock Purdy and another pace horse that can help us be multiple and keep the ball moving down the field. That's what our offense is all about. We strike once we get you sleeping, but we got to be able to get you. We got to be able to tell the lullaby first, and that's the consistency of our offense. I feel as though that if Zach Ertz came in, that could be a good addition for us. Now, not at $11 million. I understand that, but I do feel like they can kick the tires on him. Now, if he can't make himself an asset, I get that. But when we played against him, he seemed to be had some juice left. Really, if we don't get him, I hate to bring this up, but Philly could use him. Even if Goddard comes back, we don't know what he is after that. And Stoll seems to be struggling as well. He's a big target, but they could use somebody else for Jalen Hurts. I don't necessarily understand what he's going to do as far as blocking is concerned because they really block a lot with their tight ends in Philly as well as we do. But I feel as though that Philly could be a good pickup for Zach Ertz. Now, notwithstanding the problems that he has with his agent, that could be an issue, and maybe that could be the problem why they haven't pulled the trigger yet. But I do feel like we need one more contributing wrinkle on offense. That could be something for us down the line.
One thing to watch in this game is Philly plays the most man coverage of any team in the league. And to me, it's gonna be really interesting to see how the Niners attack man-to-man coverage. I mean, Kittle against Kevin Byard, I think, is an interesting matchup. Byard plays off. He tries to limit yards after the catch, but he gives up a lot of stuff in front of him. But he doesn't give up the big play for the most part. Kittle loves to get downfield, down the seams. The Niners love to get him downfield. They did it against Jacksonville, coming out of the bye week. But it's going to be interesting. I think Purdy, we know, loves to work the middle of the field. Does he have time in this game? Can they block Jalen Carter? Can they block Hassan Reddick? Reddick has 8.5 sacks this year. The Eagles defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, hinted at his game plan. He said, we have a good plan corralling Purdy and getting tight to some of these routes so we can contest some of the throws that they throw. It doesn't sound like they're cognizant of not allowing Purdy get out of the pocket, trying to keep him hemmed in and trying to play tight man coverage. And as I said, they play the highest rate of man-to-man in the league. So how do you see the man-to-man matchups? It's Ayuk likely facing off against one of the very best in the league in Darius Slay. And then you got the talking matchup. Debo said that Bradbury was trash, and now he gets Bradbury. And I don't think Bradbury can handle Debo. But Coach, better than anybody, Bradbury cheats. And when I say that, I don't mean that he actually breaks the rules. I mean that he will sometimes eliminate some steps on these out route coverages, leave himself wide open to the big play, but also gamble for the pick. So yeah. I think Ayuk can beat Slay, and I think Debo can beat Bradbury. But Slay and Bradbury have a great nose for the ball, and they could also, lose the. They could Ayuk and Debo could get open all day against those guys, and then those guys could each come away with a key pick and win the matchup. So that's how I see it. I think Ayuk and Debo are better than Bradbury and Slay, but I think Slay and Bradbury also are so savvy that they might be able to take the ball away, and that's a big concern in this game.
Well, for me, the biggest matchups are notwithstanding, it's going to be George Kittle versus Byard. It's going to be Kittle versus Byard. That's going to be the matchup. Right now, outside of Kittle versus Byard, the next biggest matchup for me is going to be Christian McCaffrey versus Morrow and Ellis. And that's going to be like taking candy from a baby. Christian McCaffrey should have a day tomorrow, in my opinion.
As a runner or as a receiver or both, or what do you think?
As I'd like to see him mix it up, but really as a receiver. I don't want to see him in Philly getting beat down. We got backs for that. You ever heard the phrase, we got abs for that? We got backs for that. We got backs for all of the physical stuff, man. Let's use Christian where he's needed most. And it would be foolish to not attack that linebacking core. It would be foolish not really having Kevin Byard go against George Kittle. I understand that Kevin Byard is pretty good, but he's 36th ranked out of 88 ranked safeties in the league. George Kittle's ranked second out of 72 tight ends in the league, man. That's a mismatch. Okay. Right now, you can tell, I can tell you right now, they're going to go for their mixed matches. Okay. They're going to go for Jalen Carter on the inside and Jordan Davis on the inside against Jake Brindle. So I feel as though in the passing game, that's going to be the biggest mismatch, right? Mismatch against George Kittle in that linebacking core and Kevin Byard and Christian McCaffrey versus Elise and Morrow. That's going to be the mismatch. I know that Brandon Ayuk is going to be able to do and I feel as though Brandon Ayuk, Darius Slay is a good corner, but I'm going to be respectful. But Darius Slay is a good corner, but I'm taking BA all day. I'm not thinking twice about that matchup, right? It's really going to be, right, it's almost going to be like the circus of it all is going to be Debo versus Bradbury. But the truth of the matter is that while that's going on in the background, while that's happening in the forefront, in the background, it's going to be George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey killing this horrible linebacker. That's what's going to win the game, as far as
to me, it's the big key in this game is how well is Philly going to be able to run the ball. They had Cam Jurgens back healthy, and they ran for 185 yards against Buffalo, led by DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts. Now, Buffalo, granted, 28th against the run. The Niners are 10th, I think, against the run. But Philly averaged 5.8 a carry last week, and, now they're getting Lane Johnson back. And the Niners have lost both games this year when they've given up more than 4.7 yards per carry. They're averaging 4 yards a carry allowed. But to me, that if you said number one key to the game, who wins on first and second down when the Eagles have the ball? If Philly wins on the ground and the Niners pass rush is taken out of the game, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. The bottom line is the Eagles can get to 3rd and 7, Coach, and they can run the ball on 3rd and 7. Why? Because they use that brotherly shove on 4th down, and it's successful 95% of the time. And we asked Steve Wilkes this week, what are you doing to defend the brotherly shove? And he's like, we're going to talk about it. Shanahan's like, we're not going to practice it, but we're going to talk about it. We got a game plan, this and that. But ultimately, I'm going to be interested to see how Wilkes calls the game on 1st and 2nd down so they can try to take that shove out of the equation. Kansas City got 5 sacks on Philly. Chris Jones beat Jason Kelsey for a couple sacks and also had a batted down pass. Can Jair Brown be effective in this game? We saw Trent McDuffie blitz in that Kansas City game, and he had some sacks and caused some problems. Can Wilkes send Jair Brown? We haven't seen Jair Brown sent, but man, Jair Brown can finish on the quarterback. So that's the one right there. And then I'm eager to see on the outside. I mean, can Lane Johnson continue to own Nick Bosa, or can Bosa, get in there? And Chase
Can we talk
Young,
about that real quick?
yeah, and then Chase Young on the other side. I mean, Chase Young had a good week 4 against the Eagles. He had a sack. He had 2 quarterback hits. But then also Jordan Mailata eliminated him big time on a touchdown run by DeAndre Swift. So, how do you see those matchups? I mean, those are huge. Can the Niner DNs win against these 2 great tackles? And make no mistake, Lane Johnson is for sure going to Canton. But in my opinion, Jordan Mailata's got Canton talent as well. He's huge. He's 6'8". He's about 360, and he's got great feet.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big man. He's a big man in a small man's league. Let's say that. I mean, we've seen his size before. We've seen big tackles. I mean, that's the thing about scouting and with ball, Larry. You and I both know that some of these guys they're getting advantages for playing in different eras of the game. They are. For me, I Lane Johnson be jumping off sides, man. He's false starts all the time. Okay. And I have a little bit of a caveat for that is going to be hard to do. Johnny Dell's Football brought it up on Twitter the other day, and I tweeted at him. So I wanted to shout out Johnny Dell's because me and him actually talked about this. But really, we have to start going off the movement of their first offensive lineman. We can't go off the ball anymore. We got to force that line judge we got to force him into a conundrum where he's going to either have to make a decision on saying that we're offsides or saying that Lane Johnson is false starting. I understand that it's something that, it's a gotcha stat. And then, in the world and like the Twitterverse and the internet, it looks cool to kind of bring up what everybody's missing. But the truth of the matter is that you cannot miss that. That's horrible. Like he cannot keep doing that every play. And we're going to have to start going off the movement of him rather than the movement off the ball, because that's traditionally how it's taught. One of the reasons why he's getting away with it is because of the tenets of football. That's the first thing that defensive linemen are taught. Do not go off the movement of the man in front of you. Watch the ball. Always watch the ball. Always move off the ball. So even when he gets that half step in front of everybody, you see it optically, but because the defensive line and the rest of the offensive line is subsequently moving in unison, it doesn't come off as much. The problem is that we don't have edges that are literally moving when he moves. And that's what needs to happen to expose that shit. I'm tired of seeing it, bro, because it really is, from an offensive line perspective, it really is a disadvantage. It's a huge disadvantage for a defensive lineman to have an O lineman that consistently hops off the ball a full step before you even get off the ball, off the line of scrimmage. That is huge.
Well, I mean,
right?
And wait a second. I mean, did we all start watching football yesterday? There was Anthony Munoz. There was Walter Jones. None of these guys ever did that. I mean, none of these guys ever did that. You didn't see them kick out before the snap. Why is Lane Johnson supposedly the great? Are we supposed to believe that Lane Johnson's the greatest pass protector in the history of the NFL? Because if he's really that quick off the snap, where he's anticipating and being able to kick out literally before the ball is snapped, and they're never going to call that, then it's almost impossible to beat him around the edge.
It's impossible to beat him. And Larry, and that's because
it's got to be a penalty.
It has to be. But Larry, because people, trench play isn't sexy, right? And when you're following the ball, false starts are something that, let's be honest, the reason why people hate false starts is not because it's discipline. It's because it slows up the game. Everybody just wants to say, what's the game being ran, right? And nobody cares about you false starting all the time. But the truth is that in the trenches, the first man off the ball and the low man wins, okay? If I start faster than you and if I get to you before you can get to me, I win that matchup. Lane Johnson, his entire body of work is predicated off of his reaction time and his get off and his kick step, all right? And he religiously does it all the time. they have to call it, man. And for me, I'm petty. I know that he's a great player. I get it. There's also the run game. I hear all of that. But it's hard for me to crown a guy who clearly is jumping off, is false starting throughout his entire career. I mean, he was doing this in the playoffs. We're talking about this during games in the playoffs, and they're still not calling this. That's something that I'm going to be looking for. And really, I feel that the way you're going to have to call it out is that it's hard to coach it up because every D lineman, since they've put their hand in the dirt, has been taught to look at the ball. But in order to expose that, you're going to have to go off the movement of him, right? And simultaneously, what it's going to do is that when the defensive line or the edge across from him jumps, it's going to optically look as though that they got an extra step on the offense. And you know what's going to happen? Players from the Eagles sidelines are going to be calling it out, not understanding that they're calling out their own man. Because naturally in football, when you see a defensive lineman get an early jump, the first thing you do is you start calling to the refs like, yo, he's offsides. Watch this guy. We've got to start making it a point to go off of Lane Johnson's movement. Because if we go off of his movement, then it's going to be clear that it's him jumping.
The bigger issue is just penalties in general, right? I mean, the 49ers, the Eagles commit, it seems like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but watching the last 4 or 5 games, seems like the Eagles always commit fewer penalties than their opponent. So, I saw a stat this week when the Niners commit a penalty on the offense on first down, they failed to get the first down 73% of the time. It's a total drive killer. They can't overcome penalties. So does the Niner offensive line get overmatched against the Eagles D line and hold and clutch and grab and get penalties? That could derail the game. And then to me on the defensive side, can the Niner young DBs, they got 5 young DBs. It's a very young secondary. Can they play with poise down the field, the ball in the air on balls to Devontae and A.J. Brown? If the Niners DBs and O-line account for a ton of penalties, the Eagles very easily, that could be their avenue to winning this game. And if the Niners can minimize their penalties on the offensive line and minimize their penalties in the secondary and just minimize their penalties overall, I think their chances of winning this game go way, way up. What do you make of the spread, Coach? The spread in this game is Niners by 3. And that is very, very surprising. The Niners have not been underdogs all season, so that's not that big of a surprise. In fact, the Niners haven't been underdogs since they went to Philly last year when the Eagles were favored by 2.5 in the NFC Championship game. But the Niners were favored by at least a touchdown in Cleveland and Minnesota. They lost both those games. The last week they were 7-point favorites against Seattle. They won 31-13. Shanahan was asked about the odds this week. He said, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I really don't know how that stuff works. I don't know why. It is random. Nick Sirianni said, hey, look, Philadelphia, he said, going into last year, nobody thought we'd be any good. It's okay to be the underdog. Before I ever stepped a foot in the city, all I knew was Rocky versus Apollo Creed. He said, this city plays the underdog role well. What do you make of that point spread where the Niners are a field goal favorite?
Well, I think they're kind of reading the tea leaves of the season. The Eagles have had a rougher season than them. They've played a tougher
10-1 though.
Yeah, exactly. But they're also reading the context of the season that you can't you can't ride too high to the sun forever. At some point, I think they're betting on them regressing to the mean rather than them going ahead to go be 11-1 and possibly having yet another dogfight versus a game team like us, right? We are facing a team that is kind of coming a little battered, right? They have about 5 starters that were hurt in the last game that they've played. They've had 4 games in a row where they faced great quarterbacks, top echelon quarterbacks. And in those 4 games, they had to come back in all 4 of those games and won. They're placing a team in the 49ers, who we are one of the most physical teams in the league, and we get it done on the ground. And we pound you with a great defense, a defense that doesn't let you come back. On top of the fact of all of that, they're missing key starters on their defense, and we got 3 days of rest on them. We should be, we should be coming in +3, right? We should be. All right, we're ready for them. They are on a hot
You mean
-3, sorry.
-3, yeah.
Yeah, we should be -3. I mean, we're coming in hot. They've won 5 in a row, we've won 3 in a row, but we have a little bit more experience than them, and we've got the rest on our side, on top of the injury bug. We've got that on our side as well. But I don't necessarily think that it's that big of a that big of an issue. Honestly,
Well,
I thought the biggest
they'd be if that game were at Levi's, then if home field is good for 3, would the Niners be a 6-point favorite if this game were at Levi's?
all right, now when you put it like that, that's kinda
You know, doesn't that seem
yeah,
like, wow,
yeah.
that seems kinda crazy. I don't
But
know.
we've seen things like this though, Larry, because
I think it
we
might be
were a
the rest.
favorite.
It
We
might
were
be
a
the rest edge.
It has to be the rest because we were a favorite going in after the rest with Jacksonville, and Jacksonville was the hottest team in the league. And we were going into Jacksonville off a 3-game losing streak and still were going in. We were going in as Jacksonville as the underdogs at home. So it seems as though this isn't the first time Vegas has done this with us.
No, I know. I mean, when I saw that spread, I was shocked. I really
Yeah,
was. I was shocked. But then, you look at the numbers and you say, well, the 49ers they are going up against the 29th ranked pass defense. They are playing really well. Purdy's playing exceptionally well. They're running the
he
ball
is.
well. The 49ers looked really strong against Seattle on a fast surface. I don't know. I mean, it's this one's surprising to me.
Yeah,
Um,
the way I see it is that the Niners are really good for Vegas because we cover. I mean, we put up points, man. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
notwithstanding those 3 weeks, the 17 points a game that we scored in those 3 weeks in our skid. Outside of that, man, we put up points, man. We go over 30 team. So, I don't I'm not mad at the point differential or the spread.
I just look at Philly's O line dominated the Niner D line last year, and the Philly D line goes up against the 49er main weakness, which is probably the right side of their offensive line.
Correct.
So it's like, how many times does a team that has a better record, who's the conference champion with an MVP favorite at home, who probably you'd say is better on the line of scrimmage, be a 3-point underdog? To me, it's very, very surprising. But
Well,
I mean, it also makes me feel good because, anytime I've seen spreads that don't make sense,
mhm,
I used to be like, oh, I'll bet against that. Now I kind of lean into it. Like, once I saw the Niners hadn't led in a month. And they rolled into Jacksonville. And Jacksonville hadn't trailed in a month, and yet the Niners were favored. And sure enough, the Niners routed. So maybe
yeah,
Vegas knows something here. There are people, Coach Dante Whitner, David Lombardi, a couple other people that I've talked to this week, a couple even in Philly, that don't think that this game think the Niners are better, and that they don't think this game is going to be particularly close. And I
yeah,
find that
there are
hard
some
to
people
believe.
like that. I find
Yeah.
that hard to believe too, man. That's a little disrespectful to the game, not even just Philly. I don't think that it's gonna be a rout. If it is a rout on either side, that's gonna be huge,
Yeah.
for the implications. For me, there are just some things that I am looking for to stay away from or to see, uh, what we should bounce back from the last game that we had. Now, when we played Philly, in the NFC Championship game, I understand that it's hard to, that's kind of a burn the tape game, right? Burn the tape, nothing to look at. Everything was wrong. We can't even coach this stuff up. It'd be disingenuous if we did, right? But that'd be hard to do. There are some elements of this game that I would like to see from a lessons learned perspective from the last game. Number one, I'm really paying attention to see how we protect Brock this game. All right. Protecting Brock is paramount. All right. We understand what happened in the last game, and I want to see if they're going to be able to do that against, particularly against Hassan Reddick. All right. And these boys have a more dynamic, younger, and faster defensive line than we had last year. And I want to see how Kyle puts together a game plan on protecting Brock. 2, challenges. I want to see if we're going to be challenging the ball. I don't want to be flat-footed because Philly is more galvanized on beating us and more on top of moving the ball downfield. And we're sitting here where Kyle's stuck looking into his play sheet, and we should be calling challenges. Last game we had, not calling challenges at the right moment hurt us. Not protecting Brock at the right moment hurt us. And 3, for the defense, I understand that Philly pretty much circled the wagons once they knew that we couldn't do anything offensively. But my God, man, what they did to us on the run. We got to be able to stop Philly's run game. Okay.
And what they did last week, I mean, they almost ran for 6 yards a carry last week. Now, granted, Buffalo doesn't have as good a run D, but Philly's running the ball very, very well. If they weren't, I mean, because not only do they can run it with Swift, they can run it with Gainwell, and they can run it with Ertz.
Yeah. And that's something that I saw with our run defense. It just didn't look good. It didn't look good. We all talked about what our defense looked. We've all seen what our defense looks like when you leave them on the field too long. Larry, by your hard work and the things that you've highlighted, you've also let everybody know about the play usage, that as far as how many snaps our defensive line, particularly Nick Bosa, was running during games versus when we were struggling versus how many snaps he's taken when he gets a breather, right? He's almost cut his snaps in half, right? So this is something that I still want to be able to see with the Eagles. Is our depth of that defensive line going to hold up against this offensive line? Now's the time to find that out, right? Do we really have depth or do we just have guys? This offensive line is going to point that out. They're going to show us if we do. Can we get to Jalen Hurts and get sacks or not? If we can do it against this offensive line, we can do it against anybody. So there's a lot of litmus tests that I'm willing to see. Litmus tests that I'm willing to see what we can do so we can be a stronger team, because anybody can sit back and say that our team is good enough to just go out there and handle business. But we have serious issues with our team that we need to see if we rectified them after a 3-game skid. And this is the perfect game to find out.
Let's once again shout out the sponsors. We're brought to you by MarinAutoglass.com, 415-883-3030, New York style Italian sausage, Underdog Fantasy and Mojo Fantasy. Check the link in the description, type in the promo code Krug, and they'll match you up to your first $100. And of course, the title sponsor of the Krug Show, Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right, let's get to the supers, and then I've got one last topic for the coach before we bolt for the door. We're an hour and 12 minutes into our live stream, and we have about a dozen or so supers here. We got Elite Archer 23. What has Kyle done for you to remain confident he's going to win anything? Regular season wins, I guess, is the standard now. I understand. I understand what you're getting at there. He's got to prove that he can win big games in the playoffs, but he does have a good regular season record, despite the fact he's had some bad quarterback play early in his run here, and he's got a very good playoff record. So, as far as win anything, hey man, you haven't done it till you. Andy Reid hadn't won the big one till he won the big one, but a lot of times it comes down to, do you have the right quarterback? Andy Reid found Mahomes. He found Super Bowl glory. Is Brock Purdy the answer for Kyle to find Super Bowl glory? I think that's probably the question, and only time's going to tell on that one. Alex T says, what are ways the Niners on both sides of the ball can take the Eagles into deep waters and empty out their gas tank by the fourth quarter for the knockout? That's interesting. I would say run the ball. Run the ball and keep their defense. You know, the one thing about it, here's the thing, my answer to that, Alex. Last week against Buffalo, Buffalo's offense had 92 plays. The week before against Kansas City's offense kept Pittsburgh's defense, or Philly's defense, out there for, I think, 72 plays. So they've played a lot of snaps the last couple of weeks. And I think if the Niners could somehow get a lead and figure out creative ways to keep their running game going and could dominate the time of possession, the Philly could get to the fourth quarter of this game and just be gassed. So
Yeah.
I do think that the last couple games play in the Niners' favor. Maybe that's why the Niners are 3-point favorites, is the Eagles' defense has logged a ton of plays the last 2 Sundays.
Yeah, I feel like we need to keep them on the field. We got to see what they're made of with the run game. That's where we have an advantage over them as far as the trenches are concerned, with our offensive line facing their defensive front. Running at them is going to be a little bit of an issue. What they have in Carter and Cox and Davis, Sweat, they're class personified in stopping the run coming at them. But I don't think these boys are necessarily in shape, man. I think we
They
can
get a lot of
outrun them.
hats on. They get a lot of hats. I'll say this: they hustle to the ball. They really do.
Yeah.
They get a lot of different guys on the ball, but I don't think they're a classic great run D. But they do. It's not a lazy D.
No, they're
get a
not
lot of
lazy,
guys
but they're
around the
not.
ball.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily as fast as like Dallas was. Dallas was fast,
Right.
The Bengals weren't necessarily a good defense, but they flowed. They were fast, and none of these defenses are
Much
the Bengals.
faster.
Yeah,
Much faster.
none of these defenses are Cleveland, right? So what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing a lot of big guys. They understand what they do up front, but they get their tongues wagging too, man. They get tired. They don't like running sideline to sideline, and if you keep them on the field for long drives, they struggle. They can be had. Those are the
They
things
got
that
undersized defensive ends that love to play the pass, but if you can lean on them and run on them, I think Reddick's not huge. He's 240. Sweat is a speed rusher. You can really dominate them. If you can dominate time of possession, keep them on the field and run at them, as Coach just said, I think that's a way to beat Philly. But they get you. What happens is you make mistakes because they put a lot of pressure on you. You get behind the chains, then you get into some third and longs, and then they peel their ears back. They've got guys in the back end who can catch interceptions, and they got D linemen that can put heat on the quarterback. So it's all about first and second down. It really is. Gammon Brown's coach, from your experience coaching and playing in the trenches, which side does inclement weather benefit the most, offensive or defensive line? By the way, the talk here, just so you know, this one here, Sports Fan says the rain's going to stop at noon. The game's not till 4 Eastern, so no rain to slow the Niners. So it shouldn't be a lot of rain in the game. But go ahead, Coach. If there's a lot of rain, Brock Purdy's indicated he may wear a glove on his throwing hand, which we haven't seen. I guess he did it at Iowa State a couple times. But does rain favor offense or defensive line in your mind?
Well, it's kind of weird because line play as an offensive lineman, I love inclement weather. I love the rain. I love snow. I'd much rather be pushing against somebody in bad weather than trying to get pushed. When you're sitting down in bad weather in the ground, I'm old enough to know when we went from AstroTurf to start going to next gen, right? I'm that old. So even when you played on natural surface, man, all you got to do is get you some 3/4 inch spikes, throw them things on and your detachable cleats and get to going, man. I love rain weather. I know some D linemen that didn't like it because you do have to take on double teams. You do have to make moves and get bull rushes and generate a lot of traction from the ground going up against a offensive lineman who's standing in front of you on pass pro. But for me, the run game is the cure to it all, man. Rain, sleet, snow, hellfire, perfect day, 90 degrees out, -30 out. Let's run the ball. So I feel as though that's why I like this game for us on the ground. Running wise in the rain, we should have no problem, man. Get some molded cleats on, put your foot in the dirt, and let's go. So running the ball.
My experience on that has just also been that it's all about who can keep their feet. So I mean, you can't make plays on the ground. So whatever cleats you need to keep your feet, you need to wear. And then, to be honest, it's just some backs can just handle the rain better than others. Edgar Bennett for years was a great mudder.
That's what I'm about to say. A mudder.
He was great. And Marcus Allen, if you go way, way back, was a great mudder. There are people who, horse racing, that when it rains, they start licking their chops because because then they go to, in horse racing, I knew guys who were awesome gambling on horses because a lot of times being a mudder has to do with the size of the hoof, and it's all about your pedigree and your bloodlines. So if you come from a long line of mudders, then you potentially are a great mudder, and it has to do
Jerome
with
Bettis was a great mudder.
yeah. Well, and for horses, it has to do with the size of the hoof.
Woof. The width.
And for running backs, it's a weird thing. Some guys can run over their pads and keep their footing in bad weather. I thought Emmitt Smith was a great mudder. But then other guys go to the ground all the time because, even though Barry Sanders was a great back, Barry Sanders was awesome on the turf and on the faster surfaces. If you saw him in the mud,
completely different runner.
He wasn't nearly as dominant because he didn't have the ability to, jump in and out of holes. Where if you're run over your pads like an Emmitt was great in the bad weather.
And it doesn't even have to do with size on being a mudder, because who was an amazing mudder? Gale Sayers.
I'll tell you,
Sayers was a great mudder.
He was a good Niner mudder if you want to go back, and he wasn't a great player, but he was very good in the wet weather, was Amp Lee.
Yeah.
They had Amp Lee. I mean, and it was just because these guys that kind of have great footwork. Like I bet you anything that Elijah Mitchell is a very good running back in the mud, just because
Eddie George was a hell of a runner, and he was a great mudder, man.
I mean, the one that to me stood out was Edgar Bennett, man. If it was bad weather, man, Edgar Bennett was incredible. Jerry Schetzel says, love you guys. I look forward to this show every week. 49ers coming into Philly, scorched earth style, 38-17. They aren't ready as long as Brock is healthy and upright. Philly's D ain't stopping us. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you. Carson Taylor says we should hand the ball to Trent on 4th and short. There you go. Thinking outside the box. Killa Mig 831 says Brandon Ayuk is going to get around 150 yards and 1 touchdown. Kittle and C-Mac are also getting a touchdown. Purdy is about to put up a 300-plus yard day. This is his revenge. Wouldn't that be something? That would be something. If he does put up 300 yards in this game, his odds of winning the MVP are going to go way, way up. Paul says, big fan of this channel. Oh, big fan of your channel, Coach. Coach, hashtag quest for 6.
Thanks, Paul.
We got this one from Killa. It says, cry, Eagles, cry. Oh, I see what you did there. Kawako Puff says, Kyle needs to talk to the refs about Lane Johnson. Yeah, I think that would be worth a mention. Hey, by the way, their tackle false starts every freaking time.
Every play.
Yeah. Could you possibly call it once? Jonas Lima says, people talk about disrespect because of the record, but they forget that the difference of records between the teams is their kicker. Elliott made a 59-yard field goal. Moody missed a 40-yarder. Both are 9-2, essentially. That's a great point. That really is a great point. But Elliott's, if it comes right down to it, you got to think, and let's be totally unbiased here. If it comes down to a field goal, major advantage Philly. Yeah. Elliott's 59-yarder against Buffalo was one of the greatest field goals I've ever seen.
It was nice.
And
it had all the theatrics.
Oh, and he stuck it. I mean, it was like it would have been good from 66.
It was so good.
Low, and it had a perfect angle. I mean, he could not have hit that any better than he did. He striped it. I mean,
I'm riding with my man Booty. This is too much. I'm riding with Booty, man.
We all are. Beyond says, should we go after Adrian Amos? He was released. Oh, the former Bear. What do you think of Amos? I'm not a big Amos fan.
Not a big Amos fan at all.
I think, you know what? I'll say this. I think Taylor Hawkins is underrated. I think Hawkins, he played corner at San Diego State. This year he had a great camp. The only reason he didn't make the team was a numbers game. I have confidence in Taylor Hawkins if by chance he has to go in that game. He can cover. He's smart. He's physical.
He drew your interest early in camp. I remember you talking
I
about him a
like
lot,
well,
especially when they let him go. You were shocked.
last year he was in he okay, so I loved him at San Diego State, right?
Okay,
Played on a really good defense. He was a
right.
corner. He
Mhm.
was a bigger corner that didn't have natural, cornerback. He's a little bit built, a little bit bigger than a natural corner, but he
Right.
played corner and he played it really, really well. Then he
Mhm.
showed up in Niner camp looking to make the team as a safety, and he put on bad weight, and he didn't look like the same player. But this
Well,
year in camp, he showed up looking like the player that I saw at San Diego State, and he covered great. He played incredible in the preseason. He just got caught up in a game where they drafted Jair, they had Afonga, they had Gibson, they have Odom as a special teamer. Most NFL teams keep 4 safeties, and that's it. Those are your
yeah.
4, so he didn't make the team. But he was plenty good enough, and I think if he gets a chance, he'll play well. I really believe that. Okay, one last one here that I want to get your thoughts on. This is not the most flattering stat, but I'm going to throw it to you anyway, and we'll discuss it before we jet.
Let's go.
The 49ers, when they're down 8 points or more since 2017 under Kyle Shanahan, are 0 and 37. 0 and 37. This is according to the Associated Press.
Yeah.
Niners down 8 or more under Shanahan. 0 and 37. What does that stat tell you, Coach? Other than
Coaching.
the Niners haven't come back, obviously, and in the fourth quarter. Why? What makes sense of that stat?
0 and
That's a
37.
0 and 37. What does that tell you about Kyle? What does that tell you about the Niners? What can we glean from 0 and 37?
We have a hard time closing games when they're close. Being down from 8, that's one thing about it. It's a damning stat because, there's probably some things in there that they finagled to get that 0 and 37, but really, the context is that they don't talk about how close we probably were to winning most of those games. What has happened in the middle of those games? There's really no context in the stat that damning. Really, if you had to look at it just from a first glance, it shows that uh, we don't know how to play from behind in the second half. That's what it says. And really, not being able to play from behind in the second half is more emblematic of the coaching that isn't being done during the second half. And really, what happens is that it's like me and you when we get together. What is one of the things that we do is we do this show organically, right? We talk about the topics maybe for what 5 minutes before the show starts, and then we just go, right? And one of the reasons why we like that mode is because it allows us to be able to contemporaneously talk about topics as they arise. We can add the chat and be able to have an inclusive experience with the supporters so we can talk about the things that they want to be able to glean on, right? And it allows us to call on our expertise at will, right? We don't know what we don't know what we're going to be asked. We don't know what's going to happen, but we have the requisite expertise to finish out the show because we trust what we know. That's something that I feel as though that Kyle may have an issue with once the game starts shifting or when things change in games. Yeah, you and I, we could sit here and talk for a whole week. We only do a show once a week. Larry, we could talk every day and do what? Put up every point, put up every talking point that we want to talk about, go over how we want it to happen. But the fact of the matter is that you and I can come up with our own pre-made game plan of how we want the show to go. But as soon as somebody in the chat decides to ask a question that they've put money behind and they want to know something that happens in the show, guess what? The show officially stops. It's derailed. We have to be able to go on the fly and switch into the subject matter that the supporters want to talk about at that moment. And we don't get the chance to say, hey guys, we didn't do any prep on defense today going against the Eagles, so we don't want to talk about defense today. All we get to talk about is offense. No, everybody who's a supporter of us would look at us like, what is going on with these guys? They only can talk about what they prepared for. I thought these guys are supposed to know the Niners, if not the Niners, just football period. Why can't they even talk about it? So those are some of the things that you kind of see with Kyle in the middle of football games or near the end of football games, especially when they're behind, is where you have to throw out your notes. What you came up with before the game started and everything that you talked to your team about to show as though that you knew what you were doing, that don't matter now. You got to show us the goods now, in the moment. You don't get to give us any pre-canned speech. You don't get to give us any pre-canned game plan. What you have to do is you have to understand what your players are telling you is happening on the field, and you got to make a decision in that moment. And I feel like that's more of a coaching stat than it is a player stat, because out of those 37 games, we haven't had the same players, right? The only thing that's been consistent about that stat is we started with what? Kyle Shanahan led teams. So this is a stat about Kyle Shanahan.
I think it shows that the 49ers really I think he's an excellent coach. I think his offense works. I think he's a great deviser of plays and designer of plays, sequencer of plays. And I think the 49ers have some of the greatest. I think the Niners are a great combination of depth, roster depth, and top end talent. But I really think that they can't win every way. They have to win their way. They can't. Some horses can get out to a good lead and then hold on. Some horses can rate, as they say, and come from off the pace and finish fast. Some horses are closers. They like to sit 4 or 5 lengths off the pace, and when they turn for home, they like to out sprint everybody down the stretch. The 49ers like to blow out the field and hold on. And I think that's how they're going to win this game. I think they're going to get out to a 24-7 lead and hold on and win 24-21 by the skin of their teeth. I think that's the way they win. If this game, if the Eagles get out 21-0, the Niners will not come back and beat them 24-21. You know what I'm saying? The Niners could get out to a 24-7 lead, though, and I think hold on. But they can't. They're not the kind of team that can win anyway. Why? Because they really rely on balance, offensive play balance, and play action pass, and everything stems off of that. And if you don't honor the play action pass and they don't have that ability, then the defenses can shrink the field and close down the space and on the 49ers and put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I just think that the Niners, they can't win any way. They can only win their way. And even though they're a very talented team, and I think Kyle's a very talented coach, but I just don't see a team that if they fall 14 points behind in the second half against the Eagles, this thing's done. They are not going to come back down 14 in the second half. But if the Eagles are down 14 in the second half, they are not done, and they could come back on the 49ers. So I just think I think it has to do with the play action game, and Kyle's offense is predicated on a strong run game and play action pass off of it. He doesn't have to run to set up the pass. He can pass to set up the run. He's shown that. There's some flexibility there, but he's got to have play action at his disposal to beat the best teams that the Niners face, and obviously the Eagles are one of those. So I just think that's what that stat's about. I think maybe at times he gets a little too pass happy. At times he's too conservative. I mean, that's the thing. It's like he's both. Sometimes he's too conservative. I'd like to see the Niners go for it more on fourth down like the Eagles do. There'll be 1 or 2, 3, there'll be a half dozen times over the course of the year where it'll be like fourth down and they'll be, even past midfield and they'll punt. The Eagles don't punt on fourth and less than 5, unless they're inside their 15. So it's like he gets a little conservative at times with the way he calls the game, and he gets conservative sometimes within games. But I think ultimately that stat is about their reliance on the play action. And if they don't have the play action, which you don't if in the second half of games when you're trailing, I think that hurts their ability to get those big chunk yardage plays that they need to win.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that, though, Larry? Because I agree with you, and
What do I mean? I just mean like
like
you
hold
have
on.
to
Let
have.
me just
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
what I mean by that is the Niners have to win a certain way, right? And I believe that. I agree with you. I
They don't come
believe
from
that
behind.
they can't come from behind, and they have to get up quick. They have to get up early. And if they come out the gate struggling, if their defense isn't giving them the ball back consistently on offense, or at least giving the offense short fields in order to give them at least a mini drive to be able to get confidence to get points going. If they get a defense that can stand up to them from opening snap, they struggle. They struggle. And for me, I feel as though that if you can only operate your offense in certain contexts of the game, your offense is not sound. I like what you said when you first started. You said, I think their offense is good. I think their offense is good too. I
I mean,
think their
they
offense is
score
good.
28 a game. Both these offenses are
I'm here
averaging
for that.
exactly the same.
I'm here for that. I think they're good. But is that offense sound? Right? Is it sound? I don't think our offense is sound. I think it's good. I think we have great players. I think we have an amazing coach that can call good plays. But can that offense, that book that they have, can that offense stand the test of every scenario within a game and still be successful? I don't believe that.
It's in this particular game, I really think Philly's going to have success running the ball. I think they're going to have success putting pressure on Brock Purdy. But I think the 49ers are going to win the game because the Niners are going to get turnovers.
Right.
I really think the 49ers are going to take the ball away from Philly in this game. Maybe 2 times, maybe 3 times. I think the Niners are going to take it away. It's going to camouflage the fact that Philly's still going to be able to run it. They're still going to make some plays on the Niners corners. They're still going to put some heat on Brock Purdy. There's going to be Philly's going to win a number of downs in this game, but the Niners are going to get the turnovers and the Niners are going to get the win. I really believe that's the way it's going to go down. We'll see. It's going to be really, really fun to watch. One last super here. We've got Matthew Sanders who says via Colin Cowherd, the last 10 straight Super Bowl champs have blown out most of their wins. Each has 8 or more wins of 10 plus points. It's way harder to sustain close wins. That would be advantage 49ers. By the way, on the Cowherd front, Coach, do you see he doesn't like Purdy because he wore his hat backwards to the presser? Said it was unprofessional.
All of these guys are putting themselves in a group. And I don't think I heard about it. Was he serious? Did you see it?
Okay, I didn't. I did see it. I did see it. Here would be my thing. If you wear your cap forward, fine. If you wear your cap backward, that's fine. The only way I would say he was too immature is if he wore his cap sideways. You know what I mean? If you wear your cap sideways, then maybe you could say that's not the most mature look. And that looks like a young teenager if you had it sideways. But having your hat backwards, my God. Brady did it. Junior Griffey did it. Barry Bonds has done it. Baseball players, football players,
Jordan
Steph Curry does
Everybody's
it. Jordan
done it.
does it. Hat backwards, I think the hat backwards is better than the hat forwards. Why? Because in the hat forward, especially if you're in a press conference, there's lighting, and you can't even necessarily see the person's eyes when they have their hat forward if the bill's down. So I think almost like wearing the cap backwards is almost kind of like saying, hey, my hair's messy, so I'm going to wear a hat, but I'm going to flip it backwards so you can see my face because I'm doing a press conference. I have no problem to say that he's not a leader because he wore his cap backwards.
You went as far as to say he wasn't a leader because of that?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe his whole thing was he didn't think he was a leader or didn't think he was a mature leader or something like that. He compared him to Ertz because Ertz, wore his cap forward. It's like, dude, if you wear your cap inside out, maybe there's an issue. If you wear it off to this, completely to the side, maybe you're a little askew. But front or back, come on.
Yeah, well, that's ridiculous, man. I mean, honestly
Howard,
speaking,
he sounds like
Colin
100 years
Cowherd,
old.
Colin Cowherd's biggest claim to fame is being Jim McElwain's college roommate. That's pretty much as close as Colin Cowherd has been to sports and being near anybody that will potentially wear their hat backward in his life. So sometimes you just got to consider the source, understand where it's coming from, and know that a backwards hat is a wild night for a guy like Colin Cowherd. Like a backwards hat is pretty much fucking Mardi Gras. So
Have you ever had a really wild night? Oh yeah, are you kidding me? In 2023, I went out with my hat backwards.
hat
What?
backwards.
You went out with your hat backwards?
And there were
What?
pictures.
Oh, bro.
It was during daylight too.
Dude, you need an intervention.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the way I kind of look at that stuff when people make those type of comments. It's like when what's the squirrely looking guy with the 15-year-old haircut at 65 years old? Who's that guy?
You talking about Mark Davis?
No. He's always he's like 65 years old, but he's a flunky for Chris Sims.
Florio?
Yeah. Like Florio. Even when he came out with
he's an ass clown.
Yeah, with that whole like Brock Turdy situation. It's like sometimes you gotta consider the source. You gotta look at who it's coming from, where it's coming from. You know what I'm saying? Like this dude still gets his hair cut in the kitchen sink by his mother. So like I can't take these guys seriously. I can't.
Well, who made fun of that was the guy who's a big fan of the Larry and Coach extravaganza, the great Pete King. Didn't like that when he was asked about he's like because he said that the Purdy Turdy thing he said to Peter King, and Peter King, who's like so respected, was like, that is the most ridiculous take I've heard by you ever.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, man. I mean, things they got to pay bills too, man. I guess that's what you got to do. You got to shill it up.
Kyle McKiernan. It's like the 65-year-old guy that dyes his hair jet black, Larry. Yeah.
He does.
That's a bad look too. Lean into it. Sports fan says Florio was reaching. Yeah, Florio. I mean, come on. Florio's just maybe nobody's as wrong at the clip that guy's wrong at. I mean, he is an unbelievable. He's wrong all the time. All right, that is going
to funky.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. I'm going 24-21 49ers. I feel like it's going to be turnovers is the name of the game. If there's going to be one guy who dominates out of like a wild card out of left field, Coach, I'm going to go with Jair Brown. I think Jair Brown is going to get turnovers. He's either going to get a fumble. He's going to be Johnny on the spot with the fumble recovery. He's going to pop one out. He's going to intercept the ball. Jair Brown is such a confident young player. He is, he's just a very, very confident young player. So I'm going to go Jair Brown as my wild card factor. Do you got a wild card factor in this one?
Wild card factor is Diamado Lenore. He has been the linchpin that has helped this defense in so many different ways. He's actually the only player on this defense who's actually had to change his position with going from outside to inside with spelling off Isaiah Oliver. And he's done really good at making sure that he's sped up the internal clock of that defense, just how they look internally, how fast they move. It wasn't the fact that Isaiah Oliver wasn't tackling well. It wasn't the fact that he was getting beat on some routes. But once you saw Diamado Lenore get put into the nickel position, you started seeing the tackles that Isaiah Oliver wasn't even attempting to make, right? Due to his lack of speed and athleticism. Diamado Lenore has made the defense a little bit more sticky on the inside, and their cohesiveness for rallying and running to ball carriers, especially short intermediate passes, because that's how people love to get at us on the defensive side. Diamado Lenore has done a great job. And again, I agree with you. I see him getting turnovers in this, especially if they bump him out to cover Julio Jones. So De'Amon Lenore is my guy.
I like that. I like that. Demo Lenore has walked around this week. He's a fun-loving young guy, right? He likes to have fun. He has had a serious as a heart attack look on his face all week long. This kid shows up to beat you. I love watching him play. Every time I think he's, too young for the moment, he shows that he's up to it. And
Just his attitude, like
so good.
if you can, the biggest thing that I've seen from Demo, his body notwithstanding, he definitely dedicated himself to his body, right? He's different, but
he worked out this summer at the Mamba Center down in Southern Cal, and I thought he had lost weight, and I said, "Hey man, you look like you're leaner," and he's like, "Actually, I put on weight."
Yeah,
so
he's got his grown man body.
He kind of reproportioned his body, and there's more muscle and less fat, and he's in great shape, and he's had a terrific year.
I think he's a vocal leader too. I see the way he plays. He plays with a ton of fucking heart. He plays with a lot of grit. He plays with a lot of passion. And I feel like a lot of the plays that he makes are on top of the fact that he's doing his job. But that's some of the stuff that he wasn't doing last year that guys like Azeez Al-Shaair were doing, guys like Jimmy Ward were doing. And it's good to see him step up and take on that role, especially with us losing Huff. So I'm looking for the emergence of Demo to step up even more, to be more of a voice, make more plays for us, man. Because that's how that stuff happens, man. A couple of plays, man. Couple of plays here, a couple of plays there. Guys start looking at you as being the guy now. All of a sudden, you're not just the guy who just barely makes it on the field. You prove yourself in games like this. This is a kingmaker game.
No doubt.
This is a kingmaker game. You do your thing in this game, your name gets bumped up or down in the hierarchy of who you are in the locker room and in the NFL. This is a good game.
3 last ones here. Matthew Sanders says $2. Which team can maintain the high emotion longer? That's a good one. I would say I like the Niners on the emotion side. I think the Eagles are a little dragging. Cassius Boyd says Ertz has 22 turnovers this season. Yeah, there's no question. That's why I like turnovers as the difference in the game. Jorge Reyes is.
I remember those days.
Larry, Coach wants to finish his take, man. Sorry, Jorge. I apologize. James Foster says Shanny gets to 40 rushing attempts. Eagles wear down.
Remember that? We that was what, the 2021 season where we averaged like 40 plus runs in like a month.
Yeah. Absolutely. And McCartier says Debo is bringing the dog out of Ambry Thomas too.
It's infectious. Yeah. That's how you know it's legitimate, when other players start getting motivated off of your play. That's how you know. That's why people loved when Huff came in. Huff was not a perfect player, right? But what made Huff such a welcomed addition to our defense was his energy. It was his energy. And I feel like Demo is filling those shoes. He's filling that void.
The one part about the Niners that people don't talk about a whole lot is they're very, very young now on the back end. I mean, think about it. Luter, rookie. Jair Brown, rookie.
We haven't even seen him yet. He looks so good on special teams.
Oh, I know.
How big?
Luter, yeah.
He's big. This is my first time seeing him. I didn't know he was that big.
Oh, he's huge. Yeah, and he plays even bigger because he's got 33
Did you
and a
see
half
him run
inch
down
arms.
Yo, I want to see him play so bad. Did you see him run down dude on special teams?
Eskridge runs 4.3 too, and he didn't have the angle.
Hawked him down, whooped him up. Whoop.
Yeah, Luter's got talent, but I mean they've got young DBs: Luter, Jair Brown, Ambry Thomas, Samuel Womack, Demo Lenore. That's 5 young DBs that they have, and they're all super talented. And I'm really eager to see what they look like in the next year or two, and maybe even this week in a game, of this magnitude. You may see these guys. The Eagles may try to put their 3rd and their 4th receiver on the field, and they may try to, make the Niners show what they've got in Womack and Luter. This was kind of why the Niners didn't feel so rushed to get a corner, because they had these two young guys coming back, and you can see why. They're talented. Luter's got some dominating talent. I mean, you're talking about a guy who could play press man corner, really long arms, great speed, tremendous athleticism. I think that was a phenomenal pickup.
I'm rough on Kyle. I admittedly so. I don't give him any break, but when he's right, he's right. Kyle stood flat-footed, looked us all in the eyes, and said that our answers at cornerback are in this building. He said that.
Yeah.
And for right now, it looks like he was 100% right.
I know.
So, the man is not perfect. He's got his shortcomings, but there are some things that when he nails it, right? And for years, one thing about Kyle is he's always been able to dig through the crates of his depth chart to find talent. So, with how often Kyle has done this over the years, there's another name that we haven't even talked about, Robert Beal. Right?
Tremendous speed off the edge. And is he going to be active in this game? And is he going to play a role? I mean, he is breathtaking to watch off the edge. He's that fast. I mean, he's noticeably the fastest edge rusher they have, noticeably.
Right. So for me, I'm proud of Kyle. Bravo. But I still believe that we've got a lot left in the tank at corner. We still haven't seen Samuel Womack come in. We still haven't seen Darrell Luter Jr. get his real just due. We're just getting glimpses of Jair Brown. These boys may grow up before our eyes. You never know. That's what's beautiful about football.
I know. Seriously. And I've been saying it to a lot of the young guys this year, hey man, keep it rolling. And some of these guys aren't playing, right? And I'll be like, hey man, for all you know, you could be the hero on Super Bowl Sunday. And they'll look me in the eye and they'll be like, I know. Like their coaches have said to them, hey, you know what? You might not be playing in October. You may not be playing in November. Jair Brown could wind up being the hero on Super Bowl Sunday. So you got to stay focused. You got to stay in your playbook. It's a long year. You got to be patient. And Darrell Luter, heck, I mean, there are people wondering if he was still on the team. Hurt his knee in camp. And, if you saw the guy walking around the locker room, you're like, wow, look at this guy. This guy's about 6'1" and change. He plays like a 6'4" corner because he's got 33 and a half inch arms. He's a mature kid who's married and has a child. His wife and kid are here with him in the Bay. He played press man at South Alabama for the Jaguars and was really, really good.
He's a grown man.
High expectations for him. And that play that he made last week against Eskridge saved a touchdown. And who knows how that game plays if that guy goes for 6. So I can't wait to see these young DBs get on the field, because I think deep down, I think every single one of these guys can play. That's the exciting part. The exciting part is I think the Niners went 5 for 5. Luter, Brown, Ambry, Womack, and Lenore. There's 5 young DBs there that I think all can play.
Yeah, so, I agree with you. Like, and that's the point that I was coming up on, is that we could really have a position or an opportunity to watch these boys grow up in front of us.
Yeah,
they really could grow up before our eyes. Yeah,
like some of these guys may be great.
On top of that is that another thing is that we got to see how they play together, right? So this is something that's proof of concept, and if you're gonna do it, why not try to get it done with the only defensive coordinator whose main subject matter expertise is in the defensive backfield? So I see a silver lining with our secondary, right? All is not lost. All right. I see a silver lining with these young guys being able to get on the field and make themselves into early contributors. And like you said, Larry, you never know. These are the games that they pretty much just stamp it for players. Like once they have that one game, they never turn back, right? These are games games like this give guys the confidence to understand that, okay, this is the speed of the game. Okay, this is the toughest offensive line or defensive line that I'm going to see. Now I know how to go hard against these guys. These are the litmus tests that, as a ball player, you think you know what the game is about, but you know that there are monsters lurking in the dark, right? And this is one of those monsters where guys are going to be able to have proof of concept when you come in the offseason and you're working on how to get better. And you're a Deebo Samuel saying that I had the worst season. I had a horrible season last year. This is the week that you prove that you changed. This is the week. All right. All of the offensive linemen who are sitting here thinking, if Coach Forrester is sitting there with the offensive line, if this was my offensive line this week, and I know that the word on us is that we're not physical and that we're disjointed and necessarily don't finish off blocks, this is the week that we shut everybody the fuck up. This
Andy
week
says, will you guys be able to sleep tonight?
No, I'm up. I want this one to go, man. Like, all right, we're gonna know.
It is tough. I fell asleep my wife last night came down like 2:00 in the morning. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I fell asleep watching film last night, just rolling back one of the old Niner games." And I'm sitting there on the couch. I'm like sitting there, kind of snoring. I mean, nothing is worse than waking up like 3 hours later and you've been sitting up the entire time. It's
I'm in limbo. Really, I've been kind of like twiddling my thumbs at work, kind of clicking in and out of Zoom. Like, Coach, are you there? Yes, I'm there. I'm listening. Like, I have not been focused or paying attention this week. This is the game that's going to be able to show it all. This is it. These guys, okay. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. When we lost this game, we felt like, and when I say we, I'm talking about the players. They felt like they lost to a team that not only disingenuously won the game, right? But they were better than them. Brandon Ayuk said that they were going to expose the Eagles. All right. After the game, Deebo Samuel went on air, all right, during press run and called Bradbury trash, and then stood on business and said, "I'm not taking it back. I said what I said." He said their secondary was as good as they were because they were a product of their defensive line, which is kind of ironic because that's how people feel about our secondary. But anyway, so it's just they can't. This is a team, Larry. This is a team in George Kittle that wears "fuck you Dallas" t-shirts to show them in the end zone. All right. That means that you thought about that. You went and got the shirt. You put it on before the game because you knew you were going to take advantage of that opportunity. This is a team that gets in fights before the game with the Browns. This is the team that walks out to a boombox dancing in front of everybody. Kyle Shanahan in a blowout tries to get Christian McCaffrey extra plays because he wants to keep the streak alive during the game. They don't get to act like they don't understand what's happening this week. Every other week, they dip in and out of the narrative and they play around with it. Am I lying? Did I say anything that's not true?
I would love to see the Niners just play 4 quarters of their.
They got to show up. This one matters. They talked all that shit.
Have the
this
foot
one
on the
matters,
gas
man.
pedal. Foot on the gas pedal for 4 fucking quarters. I'd love to see it. No more taking it easy. You get a lead of 10, go for it. I'd love to see them just. I don't care if they're going to play the Eagles again or not. I don't want to just win this game. I want to win this game.
This is a one-game season. This is a one-game season.
I want to win this game convincingly.
Yeah. This is a one-game season. Like, honestly, I know that I tried to be responsible and talk about the implications of the season and the Super Bowl and all of that. Nah. This is almost like a one-off. This ain't even an NFL game. This is a fight. This is some non-sanctioned shit that you got to have outside of the city limits. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what this is. This is like, under the cloak of darkness, the police commissioner has turned a blind eye. Like, we're going to go handle this one in the alley. That's what this game is. We talked enough. They said, come and see us. It's like, hey, man, you stole my bike. And you know what the Eagles said? Yeah, we stole your bike. Now come get it. Now come get it. No. I'm not going to argue with you on whether or not. Yeah, I knocked your quarterback out. Now come see me.
Yeah.
So it's time to play.
It's like, what's it to you? You know what I mean? Yeah. I love the fact that Debo didn't take it back. This is I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about the Eagles is I'm thinking about this. I'm going to share the screen. We'll finish with this. By the way, Robbie439 says if Brock Purdy balls out, Kyle Shanahan needs to wear a backwards hat to the presser. I like that.
That would be messy.
That would be good. Okay, here we go. This is when I think of the Eagles. This is what I think of. This guy.
That guy. Oh,
This guy.
come on, man.
This guy right here. He's annoying as hell. He's an annoying guy.
Look putting his chin out and shit. Like, you just want.
That was in a playoff game. He's mugging for the cameras.
Dog. Yeah, like, hey, dog. Hey, look. This game ain't about. They need to play this game like ain't nobody watching, bro. You ever whoop somebody's at? You ever had somebody that you wanted to dance with so bad you ain't even care about the audience? It's like, dude, whenever I see you, it is furniture moving. Like I'm talking about you need to be ready. That's what this game is about, man. Honestly, they talked enough. It's almost been a full calendar year. Let's get it. Let's get it.
There's something truly annoying about that guy. What do you think of Sirianni, by the way? I mean,
he's obnoxious. I think he's obnoxious. He's a CEO coach, so he has the time to do that. He doesn't have to worry about the defense or the offense.
Got time.
Yeah, he's got the time to do that stupid shit on the sideline. Like even walking out of the Chiefs game, yelling at the fans. It's like, bro, go talk to your team. You know, so really, it's one of those things where the same way I feel about players podcasting during the season. It's like all of that shit's cool till you get your ass whooped. Do you really want to talk about losing a game on camera after you lost? And with Sirianni, it's going to be like all of that shit is cool until we beat y'all. Then this is the thing. The narrative is that they get the back door. They get to walk away and say, this game didn't mean much matter to us. We're still on track to go number one. Home field advantage is only 10-2, but we'll know.
Here we go. Here it is. We'll finish up with this. Give everybody the image.
And look at the PR director's face in front of him.
Bob Lang.
See ya! Hey, out here anymore! Defense! See ya!
I'm this guy. This guy's so annoying.
The Eagles are still living off of Andy Reid's intellectual property.
That guy's just so annoying, though.
They're still living off of Andy Reid.
Can't stand Sirianni. He's just, I don't care. I'd love to see that guy, get rolled up on. Stephen Byer says that guy is such a puke bag. Yeah,
too much, man.
He's so Philly. All right, hey, we're out of here, but I just wanted to say we just passed 29,000 subs on our way to 30,000. And that was yesterday. And today we're sitting at 29,100. So we picked up 100 subs since yesterday. We picked up we have 1.5 million views in the last 4 weeks alone. We've picked up 2,000 subs on the channel in the last 4 weeks alone. So thanks to everybody who has supported the Krug Show. I want everybody to give a like and subscribe to Coach's channel as well. Coach puts out great content. Coach, what are you going to be doing between now and game day? Now and tomorrow? Are you doing a pregame? Or I know you do posts with the Vish. Are you putting out videos? If people go check out your channel today, what are they
definitely? So right now I'm going to be doing a post game with Vish after the game, and I'm going to do a pregame called the walkthrough. Where everybody who knows about Bang Bang over at bang/bang_49 is my channel. We just hit 2,000 subscribers. Thank you to all of my followers, supporters who have helped us. We've had about over 40,000 views in the last month. So we've been doing good. And in the 2 months that we've been here, we're pushing past almost 2,500K subscribers, man. So guys, thank you so much, man. You guys really just let me into your space, into your phones, and just keep coming, man. We're going to keep giving out more content and come out with a call-in show this week. And Me and Ryan are going to be probably doing something on Wednesdays coming up. So keep tuning into the channel. I'm going to be coming up with more individual videos and more film reviews, guys, for you guys. And we are definitely going to get a call-in show. We're going to get a call-in show. So please pay attention to the channel, bang/bang_49. And we'll be looking forward to having you stop through. And also, it's Bama versus UGA today, baby.
Who do you like?
Bama versus, I got Bama.
But
I got Bama.
I don't you think Georgia gets this one? No, you don't think Georgia? I mean, Bama's lucky to be in this game, right? After last week.
They're lucky. They're lucky to be here. But at the same time, you know, we're game. We're underdogs, man. And we were underdogs the last time we faced UGA in the SC championship game. And you see what happened there. So anything could happen. I don't think UGA has played nearly as tough as the schedule as Bama has. I think that we've been saying that 8 all year, and they've been punishing us for it. But now with Oregon out of the way and some things mixing up, I'm looking for us to really make people eat crow with Bama coming through tonight. So let's go. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide for the coach. Everybody has a great Saturday. Go Niners. Thanks for chiming in. Thanks to Marin Autoglass, New York Style, Marin Pig in a Pickle, Underdog Fantasy, Mojo Fantasy. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to the coach. Have a great Saturday. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.